Good morning, and welcome to this end of the Safari Live Sunrise Safari. I've just remembered that we don't say, "This is Safari Live" anymore, so I won't. My name is James Henry, and on camera today is Senzo. They are his three fingers. Very strange that, but quite a nice habit, I feel, an unusual one. On walk today, Stivovo making his debut on foot. Hopefully he will find something interesting, and on that note, there are tracks of wild dogs, lions, and reports of lions on the dam cam from last night, so with any luck we'll find something like that. I'm always a little bit nervous when there's a huge flurry of activity outside of camp immediately as we start. Normally that means we find one grasshopper and a dead praying mantis during the course of the 3-hour drive. Hopefully that will not be the case today. Please do talk to us using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. That's the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or the YouTube chat stream situated to the right-hand side of the screen on which you are watching us right now. We'd love to hear your questions and your comments. It would be good to hear from you. In the final control, we have got Louise Pavid in the ear. We have got Ashley Wall tapping away at the keys, and the technical genius of J. Rod doing things that are ununderstandable to those of us with merely normal human brains. I'm told that the Mara will probably not be joining us this morning on account of the fact that the internet there is not working. And despite what some people might think, we do need the internet in order to broadcast. But they will be working furiously over that side to rectify the problem. You know what I mean. Now, my plan is not so much to follow up on the lions, because I think you saw them at the dam cam here. Louise, what time were they seen at the dam cam? That was at 11:10 last night, and I'm assuming it was 2 lionesses, was it? Apparently quite a few lions. Oh, there's a male there on the road. Tracks. And so I think that, unless they've whacked something fairly close by, they could easily have wandered off the reserve. And so I think what we're going to do is head off and see if we can't spot Tandai at her den. We have got Ronald the Rover with us. We have got the microscope as well. If we find something that will be interesting to look at through them, we will do that. Now what we're going to do right now is point the camera over to where, there he is. They're just behind the tree there. Just over there towards where Stivovo is going to make his debut, and I will hand you over to him now.
Good morning, and welcome to a beautiful, beautiful morning here, fresh, coming to you live from the Sabi Sands. My name is Steve Falconbridge, and I'm joined on camera by VM. Welcome to another live safari. Please feel free to send your questions through to the handle at Safari Live on Twitter or the YouTube channel. We are out with Rexon this morning, the gun bearer and our safety guide. We're not far from camp. We've taken about a 2-minute stroll, and we already, as we walked out of camp, came across very fresh tracks of, I believe, the Birmingham boys, 2 big male lions. I believe there are 4 of them. We've got tracks here of 2. This is quite a messy track here, but you can see the size of it. In there are 3 lobes, and there is the size of the toes. It is a huge track. No other cat has a track of this size. There's the back pad, and there's the toe. This is the front of the track here, so you can just basically see the size of it. It is in quite sandy soil, which does make it look a little bit bigger, but females, so this toe doesn't extend further than the back pad. And if we go just a little bit further up, you'll be able to see it much more clearly there, as the soil is a little bit harder on the side. Clearly the 3 lobes, this is a back foot over here, and slowly as it goes down the road, I've got another little patch over here of 3, which is indicating possibly where both males were standing together. Look at the size of that. So Rexon is quite keen, and we are very, very keen to get moving and to walk, see if we can come across any more activity of these boys. Apparently the females of the Angama pride were seen on the dam cam. We're just here by Voyatela Dam, so we're going to keep walking on, see what we can come across with. So please follow us, please join us. We've got the binos on, the birding, we can hear the sounds of the bush coming alive. Listen to that. Hear the hornbills waking up. Southern boo-boos in the background. Red-billed buffalo weavers calling there from their nest as they wake up to another beautiful dawn. We're going to continue. We have a long walk ahead of us. Lions, when they walk, they can walk quite far, especially males. So let's see if we can make a head or tail of this. Please follow us. So we had quite an interesting night. Some of the staff went out last night to have a little bit of a staff bumble, which is one of the perks of this job, to basically go out there in the evening. All the production team, the FC, all the guys doing the editing and all the hard work behind the scenes, guys like myself and James, we get to do this for a living, so it's nice to get them out and to get them into the wilderness. And they spent a bit of time with Mvula last night, but he didn't get up to too much. He was just doing his thing, as leopards do. So yeah, we're going to continue here. Please send your questions and comments through. We are very excited. This is my first bushwalk on live camera. Bushwalks are probably one of my favorite things to do. As you walk through the bush, that sense of security that you create when you're in a vehicle disappears. You suddenly have more smells. We can smell the smell of a musk elephant bull as we came out of camp, and that smell is still lingering quite hard. We're going to go down to the dam here. I can see Rex is down there. Obviously, if you're walking elephants, lions, there's water. Why bypass water? If you're thirsty, pop down, have a little drink. Also, when you're down by water, there's always the opportunity to possibly scare off a little bit of prey. And when you're hunting, who knows? Who knows? Lions, when they're moving, can be, you know, what are they doing? It's quite nice to remember what kind of wind direction we had last night. And the wind for me last night was coming from the east, so it would have been coming from this sort of direction. So if I was a lion, I'd be walking in that direction or cutting across it, because any animals trying to hide upwind of you have the potential to pick up into your, or you can smell it that way, and then they can make another effort. When lions are moving like that, especially if the males are following the females, they're listening. If the females are successful in bringing down some kill or some animal, the big boys will quite quickly go in there and then just take a little bit more for themselves, as boys do. But as you can see, Rex is all the way down there. He's picked up on, or he's located some more tracks. It looks like they've crossed the pan area and they're going into a thick bush, so we're going to continue. Please follow, please join. You can smell that, Vim, hey? That musk bull is just sitting in the air. Aiden asks what we do faced with lions. Well, Aiden, first of all, when we're faced with lions, we need to be quiet, and we need to do what I'm doing to you right now. Look you straight in the eyes and be confident. As soon as I turn my head or I turn my shoulder, I'm inviting the animal to do what cats do, and that's to chase. So at no stage would you ever turn your back on a lion. At no stage would you ever run. So if we saw a lion, we would just back away slowly, keeping our eye contact on him or her, whatever they might be, but never to turn and to move. That is a death sentence. You never run in the bush. First of all, you are not fast enough, and second of all, you will entice the animal to actually chase you. They are afraid of us. They are naturally afraid of us. They might give you a negative response that's to warn you not to come closer, so you don't come closer. You listen. That's why when we're walking out here, we try and maintain a lot of silence, and we want to hear those sounds. Quite often, before you even see a lion, it's given you a warning call, a little some form of rumble deep from the chest. You quite often don't hear the first one, but if you don't hear the first one, you will hear the second one. If you don't hear that one, then you will probably feel something as an animal rushes towards you. It is exhilarating. Your heart beats a lot faster. You go a little bit white for a little bit of time, and as you gather yourself again and start breathing again afterwards, you tell the story for weeks and weeks and years on end. It is, for me, one of the most exhilarating experiences to face lions on foot, and leopards as well. They are just so just so powerful, so powerful and majestic. And I believe one of the stories, African stories, that if you want to be a man, you need to be able to stand face to face, eyeball to eyeball with a lion and not falter. And that means you're a man. So it is quite a hard thing to do. But one thing I do know, that when you are faced with your first lion, a lot of people think they would run, but your legs actually become quite jelly-like, and it's actually quite hard to run. Okay, so we're going to continue, see what Rex has got on the other side of the pan here. We're going to go back to James, see if he's got any updates for you.
Well, unfortunately we don't have much of an update. Safe to say that it doesn't look like there's any leopard here at the moment. The little one might be inside that log. There's a hole underneath the base on the other side there. That's where we were privileged to see the little cub. And we haven't seen her for a day now, and I wonder if this wasn't perhaps a temporary den. But we'll have a look later as well. We're not going to stay here for long. We'll move away and see if we can't pick up tracks of where Thandi has headed. So that's where I would expect to find the little one. I was rather hoping for a sort of backlit shot of her in the rising sun on top of that log. I think that would have been very kind of both of them to give us that sort of view. I'm just going to scan around here for a few minutes with my binoculars, because, you know, as I've said before, just because you can't see a leopard, it doesn't necessarily mean that the leopard is not there. They're very good at remaining hidden, especially in the summer grass, which, as you can see, is along. There's a vulture sitting not too far from here as well, so I wonder if Thandi, rather like the lions, hasn't whacked something close by. We'll go and have a look there. Okay, so the vulture just down there, we'll just pop down and have a look together and see what there is. It's not difficult. It's not easy to move quietly in here. Let's go forward. Ooh. Much knocking noises as the strychnos whacks up onto the bottom of the car. For those of you who are new viewers, we do drive off-road. I don't want you to worry that we're damaging the ecology of the area. Yes, it can look a little hairy at times, but we have been driving around the Sabi sand off-road for more than 30 years now with no obvious ill effect at all. We do try and only hit trees that are generally considered almost encroacher species, like these strychnos trees, which to my mind are the most irritating plants at Djuma. Otherwise, and most of them don't, in fact, most of them don't even break. They just sort of bend over and then flick up again at the end. So I know it can sound like we're ploughing a sort of new path through these areas, but generally we don't. Especially on these ridge crest areas. Now Jeff, you say, what does it smell like? It's a good question, Jeff. What it smelt like initially was really nice smell as we came up over the dam wall where we first saw Steve. It smelt deliciously like the purple panweed. The purple panweed gives off the most wonderful smell in the morning. It's a little bit like a sort of, I suppose, floral cinnamon. That's how I'd describe it. There's the bird I saw. It's not a vulture. It is a tawny eagle. Now that is quite a good sign, because a tawny eagle is an eagle that scavenges quite a lot, and many of the times that I have found some cat's prey underneath a tawny eagle. Now, if you are interested in birding, you may say to yourself, how does that man know that's a tawny eagle as opposed to a lesser spotted or a steppe or a Wahlberg's? Well, in the case of the Wahlbergs, I'm just looking quite carefully at this thing now. In the case of the Wahlbergs, you'd expect to see a sort of triangular crest sticking out the back. He's also a little bit large. The tawny eagle, however, is the scruffiest eagle that we get here, and you can see this fellow is very scruffy. He's also got darker wings compared with his back, so those are the two reasons I'm picking him as a tawny. He's the right size. A lesser spotted he could be, but he doesn't seem to have any spots. I'm just listening carefully. The bush is suddenly coming alive all around us. Woodland kingfishers, bearded woodpeckers, making their territorial taps, rattling testiculars, the ring-necked doves, of course, the white-browed scrub robin, other woodpeckers shouting at each other, hornbills. Let me shut up for 20 seconds. There are even some frogs calling. Isn't that wonderful? The full orchestra is playing today. It's almost like that they are playing the fourth movement of Beethoven's Ninth with the full choir. I'm kind of missing the name here. Tommy Two Toes, is that correct? You sound like some kind of member of the mob. Tony Two Toes. Well, Tony, you want to know if there's you want to know if it's good to bird from the car or if it's better on foot. Tony, you know, it's unusual. It's better to bird from the car because the birds, they don't run away. You know, they don't run away when you're in the car. If I go walking up to that eagle there, he's gonna fly away. We're not going to see him well, but in the car we can look at him for quite a while. Thank you for your question, Tony. Don't disrespect the family, whatever you do. Oh, Senzo has spotted a sunrise. Forward? Back?
Yeah, backwards.
Backwards. Oh, you want this artistic tree, do you? Yes? More? There we go. Isn't that gorgeous? I'm now, of course, thinking about Marlon Brando and The Godfather. So, I think we're going to hand over to Steve now. He's looking at the sunrise. Yeah, he is.
Back here, we have a beautiful sunrise coming up in front of us here. Wahlberg's eagle perched beautifully on top of the tree, scanning its newly claimed territory, looking for any food or movement of crepuscular or nocturnal animals. And speaking of crepuscular animals, we've located some really nice tracks. And the tracks are of my favorite small little animal that behaves like a much larger animal. Yes, folks, you guessed it, we have tracks of a honey badger. Now you can see there's the front and the back foot there, and what's notable is how far forward these claw marks are from the front of the toe. If I put my finger there, that's where the toe is, and that's where the claws are. So the claws are really, really long and sharp and a good inch or two away from the toe itself. But one of the most discerning characteristics of a honey badger, the thing make it much easier to identify versus a porcupine, because these are quite often interpreted as the same thing. But one thing that you can do is, if I go and I take 3 of the tracks, here's the 1, 2 and the 3. First of all, the stride distance between is very, very far. That's a good foot and a half from the back, probably about just a foot and a quarter from each other. A porcupine is a little rodent, and it shuffles. A honey badger is constantly moving. It's on the go. There's no slow motion for the honey badger. And there's another reason. If you take the 3 tracks, 1, 2 and 3, and you put a stick down, they will pass directly through all 3 tracks. You'll never find that with a porcupine. Porcupine, you'll have the track, another track over here, and that track there. So this is very exciting. It's not that fresh. You can tell it's very hard. It's probably from a few days ago when we had the rain, but unbelievable to see these. My favorite animal. I see tracks, but I don't always see them, but that's what makes them special, is they're not scripted. If we found one, we'd be very excited, but to get a camera on one, they don't stop moving. They are constantly ferreting around and looking for something. And with those big claws, I can actually show you here in the book. I've put the book nicely down on the floor here. You can actually see quite clearly in the track how far forward those claws are. And for those people who want a little bit more information about how to identify track, sorry, my water pipe has just exploded. we have a leak, folks. We have a leak. Quickly get the plumber. We have the claws very far forward, and if you can imagine, the shape of this is in the shape of a P. Yes, I'm sure you can see the P for badger. And if I can find you the porcupine track really quickly without too much, let me quickly find it for you. Porcupine, where are you, porcupine? 44. Very handy little book this, folks. Fits in the pocket. It's great for walking. And if you have a look at the porcupine track, it's a much messier down there. The claws are nowhere near as far away from the pad. And if you can imagine, it doesn't show it very clearly, but it's got that extra piece there which eliminates it from having a P. But in the sand, this looks like a B. So I know it sounds quite strange, but P for badger and B for porcupine. Quite a nice way to work. But the stick method with the 3 tracks, always, always, always the way to go. Okay, we're going to carry on. Rexon's up there trying to locate or pick up on any of the activity of these lions. It seems like they were hunting last night. Lions that are hunting do not go in a straight line. They're all over the place. Bubblegum asks, are honey badgers deadly? Now, honey badgers are quite a ferocious little animal, but they avoid confrontation if they can. They're not looking to hunt people or large animals. They feed on rodents, eggs, birds, eggs, seeds. They're quite omnivorous, but they are ferocious, so most animals leave them alone. That black and white that you see in the coloration is a nocturnal aposematic coloration, which is basically warning other animals, don't come near me, I am aggressive, or I am distasteful, or there's something displeasing about me. So it is a nocturnal coloration, because black and white is the contrast for nocturnal animals. Animals see black and white, so there's no point in honey badger being red and yellow, because the animals it's trying to avoid will not see those colors. Not deadly, but very hard to kill. Leopards struggle, lions struggle. It's just not worth the effort to kill a honey badger, to eat a honey badger. The effort that you go through, it's just not worth it. So no, not deadly, but amazing to see. I do know that all the trackers that I know that I've ever worked for, it's probably the one animal that they will refuse to walk near or go near, because honey badgers have been known, and there's many documented cases of honey badgers attacking animals and going for their balls, their genitals. I know that sounds quite strange, but most of the trackers I've worked for value their genitals quite highly, and so they believe the stories and they will not go near a honey badger. So not deadly, but they can inflict damage and pain. Okay, let's see if we can catch up with Rex. He's just a little bit forward there, interpreting the signs of the bush. Catherine Agua asked if honey badgers and wolverines are related. I don't think so, but I'm not sure what family a wolverine comes from. But I think maybe in their behavior they can be quite similar. But honey badgers are in the badger family, and wolverines, I'm afraid that question is beyond my scope. Apologize for that. I've never seen a wolverine, only in the X-Men movies. But I suppose the tenacity and the stuff they talk about is quite similar. So we passed some fresh elephant dung there as well. There are lots of things going on in the bush this morning. As the trackers back in my day used to talk about, we get off and we read the newspaper in the morning. A lot of you folks back home wake up in the morning and get the newspaper to find out what's going on. Rex is actually... Oh, okay. Rex has highlighted some tracks here, and if you can see this, for him this is wild dogs. Wild dog tracks and a lion track. Lion, wild dog. Okay, so the lions were around hunting. We got a couple wild dogs over here. Much smaller than the hyena track. Much closer together. The hyena track you'll never find very close together because they do not register, they do not justify. If you know what justify means to put the one foot on and the second foot on, like a cat would do when it's stalking. Hyenas have this funny gait when they walk, that they cross over their legs so that they never have that ability to stand on the front foot. And also because their back is sloped like this, the back legs are never going to be long enough to touch where the front legs put themselves. But we're going to carry on here. Rex has got some tracks. He's pointing in a direction. There's also spraying some spray to keep the insects at bay. As it's starting to warm up, the insects are waking up. It is that time of year. See, we do have the lion tracks again here. So they were converging on Vuatela Dam. The females, the males. There's definitely some hunting going on. It's going to require a little bit of our intuition, a little bit of our problem-solving skills. We've got an expert track with us. I can do a little bit myself. VM, I'm pretty sure, knows what he's doing, so we're going to see how far we can go. What do you reckon, Rex? Okay, we're going to go back a little bit. Lions are hunting, they're doing a circle. You've got to cover all the bases. They haven't come out here, they've all head that way. We're going to continue and see what James is up to, and we'll be back in a little while for an update. Yeah.
We're linking. Hello again. Not much has transpired since I last saw you with my very bad Marlon Brando impression. That's so that you can say, oh James, it wasn't so bad. It's actually, just in case you were wondering. I'm going to do one more foray into this block underneath that tawny eagle. I drove up this road wondering if we wouldn't perhaps see some of plans that Steve and Rex and VM are following. But I didn't see any. I'm just checking in this great leopard tree in which I have never seen a leopard. It is the most magnificent jackalberry tree. I've climbed it once, but I have yet to see a leopard in it. There was one sighting just after I got here of Karula and her consort Mvula in this tree. And that must have been a wonderful sighting for those privileged enough to see it. Unfortunately, I was not one of them. Okay, let's do one little foray into this block underneath this tawny eagle. We'll drive past the den one more, and then we're going to head out of this area and see what else we can see. One doesn't want to flog a dead horse, so to speak. Does one, Senzor? No dead horses, Senzor. That's our policy. Senzor was looking deeply confused. I don't blame him. Let's just examine this bird once more once we get him into the light, because maybe he's not a tawny. There's something slightly off about him. And by that I mean my ability to identify him. Look at him scowling at us. Looks like VM in the morning. Yeah, I'm I'm pretty sure that's a tawny eagle. He's a good looking bird, but they are very, very scruffy. Look at his tail feathers especially. Just the bottom of his tail feathers. All the barbs haven't been nicely aligned. The kind of fellow who wouldn't make his bed in the mornings. Disgusting. Senzo, did you make your bed this morning? Yes. Your silence speaks volumes. I'm just having a little bit of a listen again. Let's just look. I'm going to peer into the bushes underneath and see if I can't see a spot or two, or hear the crunch of the carnassial teeth of a leopard biting down into the rump of a freshly murdered impala. I remember when I started, one or two people took offense at my saying that the cats had murdered something. Obviously, I mean killed it in order to eat it. I don't mean murdered it for the sake of killing. Remember, we did see quite a few murders, actually, in the Mara, where those lions during the migration would kill sometimes up to 10 wildebeest at a time and not eat any of them. Difficult to describe that as anything other than murder. No, James. Wrong gear. Okay, there we go. The reason I feel slightly off about this bird, I'm still sure that it's a tawny eagle, is that it just looks slightly small. So maybe it's just a youngster, or a somewhat stunted version like me. It's amazing how variable human beings are actually in comparison with any other animals out here. Yes, there's a slight variation in size, but you never see a herd of impala and say, well, that's a very short one, that's a very tall one, that's a very fat one, that's a very thin one. With human beings, of course, we are extremely variable. Senzo, for example, is built much like the stick next to us here. Here we are. The vehicle hardly notices him when he climbs on. Alright, we're back into the strychnos. We should be nearing the log where Tundi last placed her little cub. His name is not Rebel Wilson. Gosh, I mean, the light would be so perfect now. I'm about to decapitate myself. See? And then, like I say, I think we'll press on and see what else we can find. I am sorely tempted to try and drive the rover in there, but I'm not going to do that. I don't think that would be very nice of me. Apparently lots of you are wondering if I made my bed this morning. I can't believe that anyone would dare ask such a question of me. Of course I made my bed. It was my first action of the morning. Folded my mosquito net and I made my bed. Didn't everybody? Louise has just confessed that she did not make her bed. Let's concentrate briefly here. And this leopard is not here. I'm just going to look quickly into the hole there. Yeah, we're a little bit close here because old Tandy does not like it when we're this close to the den. So I'm going to move away. We'll come back and check maybe a little bit later, but for now let's move on. Alright, Stivovo is not far from here. He's still at the Vuatela Dam. I don't think he's going to take a swim. Let's find out.
Yes, indeed, James, we are back at the dam. We carried on a little bit further west, and the tracks of those lions kind of made their way back again. So we found the spot where the males and the females kind of joined. They moved back to the dam. So we're going to continue around here, seeing if we can maybe find out where they might have moved on from. But that's the wonderful thing about being out in the bush, and the tracking element is that we had tracks of wild dogs, honey badger, lion, there's elephant tracks, but we don't see the animals. That's the beautiful thing about understanding tracking. And when you understand tracking and animal behavior and a bit of ecology, you can really interpret and talk about pretty much anything out here. But if you understand the tracks, you can find the tracks. What is amazing about that is you can do passive surveys. You can understand, yes, these animals are in fact moving. Aardvarks, aardwolves, wherever you might be, pangolin tracks. You might never see the animals, but the track itself is a passive form of understanding where they are and what they're doing. So for me, tracking is one of the highlights, one of the most important aspects of being a guide. And it's great for the soul, but it's also great for interpretation. And what's so nice is that you can almost visualize through the track. You can see it on the ground. You can paint the picture of the animal. And viewers at home like yourselves can actually see what we're talking about. Rex is just up on the wall there, seeing if he can see if the lions have crossed. We're going to continue around here. But what a wonderful morning it is. The temperatures are nice and cool. Really nice to be out on foot. Wonderful smells in the bush this morning. It's nice and sweet. There's not much air movement, and I think it's going to be quite a nice warm day. There's not a cloud in the sky apart from that small one over there as I look around. Got a nice bird there, Wiem. Can you see him? James asks what bird I find most interesting to track. I've always enjoyed tracking lions and leopards. Sorry, what animal? I apologize. What animal is most interesting to track? I've always enjoyed tracking lions, always enjoyed tracking leopards. There's such a kick, such a rush that you can experience when you find the animal. Many times I've tracked them, have not found anything, but that's fine. You get further and you get further and further, and that day, that first day that you actually track a lion or a leopard and you find it on foot, you might not see it for very long. You might not even see it at all. You might just hear it. But once you've achieved that, it is quite a special feeling. And I was blessed back in my early days as a guide, as a trainee guide. I spent what we did tracking teams, the guys who weren't working, the trackers who weren't busy, say the lodge was quiet, would go out. And I went out with master senior trackers into the bush. And they just walked, and I paid attention, and they taught me wonderful things. And that first time you track lions on your own, constantly the heart is beating because you don't know how far away they are. You get to points where you're so close you can actually smell the cats on the ground. That very feral meat-eating smell. It really is quite pungent. And slowly but surely you eventually either get audio or visual of the animal, and that is just for me one of the coolest things to behold. Okay, can you manage up here, Vien, up the hill? Just going to move up the hill here, get back up onto the road. The beautiful thing about roads is that we can quite often drag a tire or something along the road to loosen the soil. After rain like this, it's difficult to find tracks. So quite often what people do is drag tires just to also eliminate the ruts that have been formed by the vehicle movement, loosen up the soil a bit. It allows the tracks in the road to be a little bit easier. If you can have a look over here, how hard that is possible to find a track on there, where the vehicle is moving a little bit softer. Okay, we are on the dam wall. The ground is quite hard here, but as we move along further, it might get a little bit better. Okay, you can hear the pitmei fro in the background there, the red-chested cuckoo. red-chested cuckoo, one of the parasitic birds that moves in, brood parasite, comes in and actually parasitizes on the fork-tailed drongo. Now, we spoke about the honey badger just a moment ago. Fork-tailed drongo is the honey badger of the sky, very, very territorial, very, very, as in South Africa we'd say, windgat, very full of himself. He thinks he's a much bigger bird, and that red-chested cuckoo is brave enough to attract the fork-tailed drongo away, and then female lay its eggs in the nest. Quite cheeky, but it seems to work for them, because there are lots of them around. You can hear the woodlands kingfishers calling. There's some starlings above us. Hello, Dam Cam. Those of you watching the Dam Cam, I believe the Nkuhuma Pride was actually seen on there last night. That's not one of the reasons we came this way. We found those male lion tracks as we got out of camp with wild dogs, with hyena. It seems like the hyena were following the lion and the lion were following the wild dog. So these predators are competitive. They do follow each other. They will steal kills from each other. It is an easier way to go, much easier than hunting to steal. So we had the females on the cam this morning and we found their tracks this way where they've joined the males somewhere in here, and we're hoping that they're heading sort of east, southeast in the direction we're now moving. So we'll keep on plodding along here. I know Rex is a little bit further up there. He might have found something for us. We don't want to get too far away from him because there are lions and elephants in the vicinity, folks, so we need to make sure that we stay together as a group. One of the important safety elements of being out here, as you see a lot of the animals, they form in groups. You can see VM's not paying too much attention to his surroundings. He's managing to walk back down this hill quite nicely, but he's focused on me. I need to make sure that wherever I'm looking, there's nothing untoward watching us. So Rex is the safety. You can hear the tawny flanked prunier calling here on the right, the very loud metallic sound there. Very nondescript bird, very brown and bland. Not very pretty bird, but you can hear that. I don't know if you can pick that up. Jacqueline asks if I ever been tracking an animal or thought. Here we have them again. Here are the lion tracks heading this way. Jacqueline asks me, have I ever thought I've been tracking an animal and actually found, in fact, that the animal's been tracking me? I've never had that. I'm not a hunter. What you do find in the hunting industry, specifically with buffalo, people will go out hunting buffalo or hunting leopard, for example. They might wound an animal, and buffalo are renowned for running into thick bush, and then as you go in to try to find it, they actually come around and search for you. But most of the buffalo I've ever encountered or tracked generally move away, and elephants are quite similar. They generally move away, but as soon as an elephant or the wind changes and you have elephants that you're tracking and they start to get wind of you, they respond in a certain way. You can hear it from a distance, and it's best to just get out of there, to get to a safe place. You don't ever want to have to try and defend yourself against these animals. They are here in their natural environment. So how do we deal with it? You try and avoid being detected. That's the number one thing. You always be aware of the wind direction. Animals might be walking in this direction, but we are always aware of wind. See, the wind is blowing directly towards us, so we are tracking lions now in that direction. Their wind would be blowing towards us, so there's no chance of them picking up on our or smelling our scent that direction. We'll be going this way. So as it stands right now, we've still got the tracks here. As it stands right now, wind is perfect. Sun is in our eyes, which is not ideal when it comes to approaching dangerous animals. But we first have to get close enough to actually know where they are before we approach. But essentially you want to avoid getting too close to an animal or allowing their senses to be too in tune. Their senses are very good, so you got to make sure you know where the wind is. Got to make sure that if you're walking, you have an escape route. You don't walk through thick bush. If we're walking here and we pick up or locate tracks of something that we're looking through, going through the thick stuff, go all the way around where it's safe. And if they come out the other side, continue. If they don't, they're probably in there. Then approach with caution. I would never walk into thick bush like that, where possibly a leopard has gone or a lion has gone. it's just not worth the effort. So I hope that answers your question. Very nice. Here we go. And you see the back foot of the front foot of a female, and here's the back foot, and she is walking relatively quickly. There's the front foot, there's the other foot, and you can see that the front foot and the back foot is in front, and by about that much of a distance, which means she is walking at probably about a normal pace. She's not running, but she's not stalking. If she was stalking, this foot would be directly on top of that foot there, but instead it is in front by about 2 or 3 inches. The further forward that foot is, the faster she's going. Okay, so we're going to continue on here, see if we can get any more visual or any more activity. We're going to go back to James, who I think he might have an update. He's still searching for something that side. Hopefully he can be lucky. Okay.
Hopefully he can, but he hasn't just yet. Rexon, we've come back to this enormous jackalberry tree. Rexon said he thought he heard some bushbuck alarming here, but I can see no sign of bushbuck or anything that might startle a bushbuck, and no tracks either. So I'm not sure what they were shouting at. Anyway, let's just go down into this drainage system with some very pretty nyalas. I think our signal's alright. So we'll go down there, stop and listen for a while. There we go. It's going to be a very bright, possibly very hot day today. Signal all right, Louise? Oh, there is our nyala. Just go up the other side here. All right, Enzo, let's look at that nyala. Very pretty. And let's listen carefully to see if we can't hear some bushbucks shouting. Ooh. What have you seen, Nyala? It's not Tundi coming back to her den, is it? He can hear something, this fellow. He's not a cat. Let's just sit quietly for 10 seconds. A lot of bird song, but really not much else. Anyway, these nyala, I think, are my favourite antelope out here. They're magnificent looking. Their colours are fantastic. They have that regal dance that they do, and if the needs be, they'll get pretty violent as well. Really is just the most wonderful choir sounds singing. Now, Proud Cat Mama, you want to know what their lifespan is. Proud Cat Mama, their lifespan is probably in the region of 12 years or so. Most of the antelope out here live that sort of length of time. The bigger they are, the longer they tend to live. These chaps weigh about 100 kilograms for a bull. That's 220 pounds. And I think you'll find that that will probably give them a lifespan of around about 12. It's very difficult to tell, of course, because when there is a lifespan estimate, it's normally given either from a wild guess of a fairly, shall we say, liberal author, or it's taken from a sample size so small that to extrapolate it to the rest of the population is quite difficult. So, and there's one wonderful guide that I use called the Smithers Guide to Southern African Mammals, and they'll tell you how many their samples based on. So, for example, if they were to give you the average lifespan of a nyala, they'd say to you, we know that from 2 or 3 nyala. So you can see what I mean. To extrapolate that to the whole population is quite difficult. And many of these books don't tell you that. So when they give you the mass or the lifespan or the height at the shoulder or that sort of thing, it's often from very few animals. And so they can often be quite way out from the average. And it's not unusual for you to see an animal completely different sized or aged from the ones that you'll find in the books. But the average lifespan of an animal like this probably around about 12 years or so. Buffalo a bit longer, up to 20. Something like an eland in the Mara, which is even bigger than a buffalo, probably also sort of 18 to 20 years. And of course all of them will live in captivity slightly longer than they'll live out here. And our pachyderm pictures, yes, they are, absolutely. So they're related to kudu. They're closely related to kudu. They're part of the same genus. There have been anecdotal reports of them hybridizing. So I think it's possible for them to hybridize. Kudu and nyala. And then the other member of the same genus that we get here is the bushbuck. And then same family, slightly different genus off in the Mara. Of course, we have the eland. Other members include the Thitatunga, which lives in the watery areas of the Okavango Delta and up into the Congo, I think, and then the bongo, which is a magnificent looking animal, a sort of russet red nyala with stripes on it. There's also something called a mountain nyala, a lesser kudu, so lots of what we call the tragulaphids. But this chap's certainly one of the most magnificent examples. Bobby, you say, why does he have white dots on the side of his face? It's one of those questions that's actually quite difficult to answer because there's no... I mean, you get some fairly wild theories about it. Nobody's really sure. So the chevrons underneath his eye, for example, there are 2 theories that I've read about there. One is that it helps because he lives in thick bush, so he needs that. I'm not sure that that's true. The other is that if you look very carefully, you can see he's got white tips to the horns as well, and that nyalas, for some inexplicable reason, are able to size each other up from the distance between the white tip to the horns and the white chevrons underneath the eyes. I think that's garbage. I'm not sure why they would have, evolved the expensive need to produce that beautiful white color instead of just looking at the size of each other the way that the rest of us do. So I don't know. The white spots possibly have some kind of camouflaging effect. I think that's probably what it is. It makes it look like dappled light, I suppose. Like a dappled light spot, as opposed to it breaks the outline slightly. But your guess is actually as good as mine. Yeah, I don't think we're seeing any leopards here right now. We're going to move on from here, go down towards the line, and see what we can find that side. Although I think we're good. I just thought I heard some alarming. Alrighty, on we go. Okay, let's head back across to Steve and find out how his tracking expedition is going. I'll hopefully find something large to show you by the time I next see you.
Welcome back from James. We are still on the search The tracks are up and down, up and down, up and down. Rex is on the radio as we speak, coordinating with one of the other vehicles that has located some of the tracks further that side on Rebecca's Road. He's just trying to coordinate best possible approach. VM looks like he's pointed something out there, which does indeed look like a leopard track. And compared to what we saw just before, the lion track, the size here is much smaller. That's about 9 centimeters. I don't know if you can see it. My hand was in the light there, but we got the toes here and the back pad. There it is. It's possibly from Mvula last night. I think we're in the same sort of area that we saw him. But while we wait for Rex to just chat with the other guides and see what's going on, we can talk about a couple things here. I love talking about my trees, but if you listen closely, can you hear the birds in the background? If you can pick up on that. Go away birds, go away birds. Used to be known as the grey lory, but it's not a lory anymore. But I've got a very nice tree here, which I was talking yesterday about medicinal plants. And if you have a look at this one here, the very fine leaves, this is what we call a sickle bush. This is the tree that guides are terrified of driving over, because the thorns or spines, as you would find on this plant, are actually very, very powerful and will penetrate a tractor tire, a Land Rover tire, absolutely anything that you drive over with will not survive. And looking at the flower over here, it's a little bit faded, but this plant is also known as the Chinese lantern. Flowers are slowly disappearing. They're not looking as pretty as they were. But when we talk about medicinal value, this plant is the A to Z of medicinal plants in the African bush. The leaves can be chewed and applied as a poultice on scorpion stings or snake bites. Obviously, ideally, it's best to not be stung or bitten. But if you do, you can chew these and then apply them onto the wound, obviously dressing it with a bandage, or you could possibly take some bark from the silver cluster leaf to work as a tie around there. Also, you can steep it in warm water to make a decoction and then clean out your ear if you have any earache. And if you have toothache, you can take the bark, you can chew it up, you can make it into a fine paste, and you can apply it to a sore tooth. And that apparently will alleviate any pain that you have there. Also, the bark and the roots, all of the plant can be used for treating fever, all sorts of ailments that you might encounter out here. And as we know, most of the medicinal plants, or most of the medicinal properties we have out there in the pharmaceutical industry, have come from nature, and we've just gone and mimicked them. So quite nice. It's not actually too bad. Maybe it is. It's not the best, but the leaves are quite fine, quite small. You can get a look at that. A very, very nice tree out here. It's also known as an encroaching species, which means that if unchecked, or if you allow overgrazing to happen, this tree will overtake an area. And once it forms very, very thick stands, very, very difficult to remove. Trying to get your hands in there and remove it with a bulldozer or with chopping it is very difficult. As I meant to say, a bulldozer is probably the easiest way, but is that environmentally friendly? No, it's not. Quite an old specimen. We can see by the amount of lichen that has grown on the bark over here. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Lichen is in fact a symbiotic relationship between fungi and a number of algae species. There's quite a few different types, quite a few different combinations, and the lichen is actually living off of the bark of the tree. It might slowly break it down, but it's taking in nitrogen and moisture from the atmosphere. So it is a completely sustainable plant. The fungi does the reproduction and the algae does the photosynthesis. So quite awesome. Lots of different types of lichen. And I've got a grass here. I don't know if you can get up on that, VM. It's moving a bit in the sunlight or in the wind. We call this sawtooth lovegrass, and it's quite a nice plant to do. We can also call it popcorn plant. If you watch closely, it explodes. Oh, terrible. Way, you see that? Quite a nice party trick out here. We need lots of party tricks to keep people entertained, and we're going to carry on. We're going to carry on back this way, see if we can catch up on Rex. We don't want to be left alone, as I said. Oh, here we go. I'm a bit hungry, Vim. Are you hungry? James said he didn't quite like these yesterday. but I quite enjoy them. They are sweet, the white berry bush. And while we're waiting to get any information, let's have a little snack. I think they're delicious. The pips are a little bit bitter, as James said. But as a vegetarian, I need to keep snacking all day. It's the only way to keep the energy levels up. But yes, sometimes a little bit bitter. You can hear the red-billed oxpecker. I don't know if you can see on top of the dead tree at the back there. Top left. Here an orange-breasted bushshrike. The black cuckoo, who's so sad. I'm so sad. I'm not so sad, but he's always very melancholy. Beautiful sounds in the bush this morning. Nice and fresh. The grass is very moist, lots of dew. Our socks, well, not that I'm wearing any socks, but our shoes are nice and wet. Nice to be on the road for a little bit. As I said, there are tracks up and down. Rex has got something there for us. We're going to see if we can get over to him, see if he's got some more information. Still got berry seeds in my mouth. Chitty Chatty Meg wants to know what the difference is between fungi and algae. Well, fungi is a fungus and algae is actually a plant. Fungus is spores, is not actually a green plant. It's not a plant at all. Fungus is what grows. It grows with spores. Do you just want to move across there? We have a car coming and we don't want them to be knocked over. Morning, folks. How are we doing? Very good, very good. One of the vehicles on their way out, they're trying to help us see if we can locate those lions somewhere or find the lions. So fungi is a fungus, and it's actually part of the fungi family, whereas algae is part of the plant family. So completely different in their kingdom, one of the different kingdoms there, so a very different plant. Fungi is not a plant, algae is a plant. I hope that answers your question. How are we doing there, Rex? Okay, we got the tracks heading this way, heading east into the drainage line. We're going to follow. Okay. Hey folks, so going down into the thick stuff here. So we're going to keep the volume down a little bit. There we go. Just small touches on the sand. It's very hard to see, but all you can see is a little bit of a indentation. Very, very difficult to see in there, as Rex is pointing out. Oh. Folks, we're going to continue here, see if we can go down to the drainage. We're going to see what we can find. We're going to keep quiet now because it is getting quite thick. James might have something for you, so we're going to go across to him and we'll come back to you in a little while with an update.
No, not much, I'm afraid. We have the water. There we are. That's Twin Dams. I'm afraid we have found no further mammal life since I last saw you. But that's okay, we get over these little trials, you know. As I said to you, lots of tracks in the morning normally means one grasshopper and a dead praying mantis for the morning. We still have a little bit of time though, so we're not going to worry too much about that. I think what we're going to do is head towards Chitwa now. Taxon and Aubrey are also around helping Rexon and Steve, so I think there's enough activity covering this area, so I think we'll carry on down towards Chitwa. Let's just have a quick look here. Now let's just look down there towards those weavers' nests. Now we watch these little weavers' nests being built early in the season, and we watched some red-headed weavers building yesterday, and this time of year is always, it's just very slightly tinged with sadness for me, because that huge exuberance and excitement of the early summer, of the springtime, has been replaced now, of course, with the sort of regular rhythm of the summer, if you like, and it means that the weavers have pretty much finished building their nests. It's always been something I've remembered from childhood, and that is that as the winter dissipates and the spring comes, so the weavers start to build their nests as we move up towards Christmas and the holiday season here, which of course to many of you is total anathema because it's cold and you have a sort of white Christmas and we head towards the warmth of the holidays. And then when you come back in January, that's all just a bit finished. There's the weaver. Top to the left hand side there, Sinzo, on top of this twiggy tree there. Can you see him? Yes, you'll have to zoom in a little closer to see him. That's it. Left a bit. Left. Left. That's him. Left. Left. Straight. Left. There. That's the one. Oh, and he's gone. How fantastic. He's gone. He's just above the nests now. That is the southern masked weaver. Very pretty colours, which he will lose at the end of the summer. He's still checking out his nests a bit. That's quite nice. Here comes another one. There's a female. Mrs. Weaver. Ooh, they look like they're in a bit of a courtship. Maybe the breeding isn't quite over yet. No, she's definitely playing very hard to get. Young Mrs. Weaver. There we go. Alrighty, let's carry on here. I think our signal should be fine. Louise, if it does break up, it should come back as soon as I get onto the road below here. So if we do go black screen for a few seconds, are we still with you, Louise? Or have you given up on us? Ah, thank goodness. I can now smell water, not see them. Where are they? No, like everything else, they're hiding from me today. I think let's go down to Chitwa and see what Ronald the rover can find for us there. Right, one more brief signal dip as we go through here. Hold your breath. We made it. I think we made it. Well, there's a slight twinge of sadness also when I drive through this area, because this is where I last saw Kruger. Before she passed on to better things, we hope. Ooh. There are two squirrels either grooming each other or in flagrante delicto. Can you see them, Sins? And no, it's just a very friendly grooming session. Isn't that sweet? Nothing nefarious going on there. Perhaps a bit of flirting, but that's all. Very attractive little sighting. Doesn't that look like the perfect place to spend your morning if you were the size of a squirrel? Oh, just a little bit nervous. Nervous because of the alarm call from a Birchall starling. They seem to have relaxed again. Isn't that sweet? Now, I was some time back trying to read up on their social structure, and basically they will live in, I'm just trying to remember. Hang on, I've opened the wrong app now. They can live in couples, or they can live in little groups. And I suspect that this is a couple of them living happily together. But let me just check it up quickly. I seem to remember it being quite an interesting social structure. Can we get past us, or shall we move? I think we need to move slightly, do we? Hold on one sec. There we go. Morning. Good? How's it going? No, nothing that we've seen, I'm afraid. We're just watching some squirrels. Mane? Tingene kui? Okay. Okay. Nkomo. Well, he was just saying the tracks of the Styx Pride have gone north up towards Treehouse Dam. That's very sweet. Yeah, the Jake, you say you've never seen two squirrels together that weren't fighting. That's interesting. That is very interesting. Right, I still can't find what I'm looking for. There we go, tree squirrel. Give me 1 second, everyone. While the tree squirrel is sometimes solitary, pairs or small family parties comprising a female with 2 or 3 young may be seen. So I think this is a pair. And the grooming, of course, will just reaffirm bonds. Very nice. Now, Tommy Tokay, you're wondering if this is the same squirrel that's found in North America. No, it is not, Tommy. This is the tree squirrel, found only in Africa. They are not found anywhere else. It's one of only 3 squirrel species that we find here. Only one of them is indigenous. Well, that's not necessarily true, actually. We get the tree squirrel, the red bush squirrel, the striped tree squirrel, the mutable sun squirrel. What the hell is that? Only found in Mozambique, the mutable sun squirrel. Never heard about that before. And then the ground squirrel. The only other squirrel we get here, which you may have seen before, is the grey squirrel, but that's a European grey squirrel, and it lives in Cape Town. And that's an import from Europe. And they're much bigger. These chaps are very small. I'll try and get a mass for you. They are not big things at all. They probably weigh, oh shame, they are very tiny. They weigh about 190 grams. I don't even know how to convert that to ounces. 190 grams is about, it's about a fifth of a pound. Just more than that. Quarter of a pound. He's a quarter pounder. He's a quarter pounder sans cheese.
Got something at the back.
Oh, he's got something at the back there. Of course he's got something at the back there. Senzo, thank you for pointing that out to us all. What he's got at the back there, Senzo, are known as his testicles, not to put too fine a point on it. Squirrels have outlandishly large testicles. He's just washing his face now. He's a bit embarrassed because Senzo has pointed out his fairly substantial package. Now the reason for their very large testicles, of course, is that when they're competing for mating rights, often the females, I imagine, will mate with more than one male. And so the larger the testicles, the greater the chance, of course, that if the female has mated with another male, that if you are the male squirrel and you manage to produce a volume of sperm greater than the male before you, so then you will have a greater chance of being the father. And that has been the evolutionary pressure that has driven the size of testicles. Testicle size is actually something very interesting, quite apart from its slightly sensitive nature. But with primates, you can actually predict their social structure. In fact, with many mammals, you can predict their social structure from the size of the testicles. And the very interesting one, of course, is the difference between gorillas, human beings, and chimpanzees. Gorillas, despite their vast size, have got very small testicles. Chimpanzees have enormous testicles, especially bonobos, which live in a sort of egalitarian, hippie, free love situation where everybody mates with everybody else of both sexes. And what that means, of course, is that no male can be sure of fathering the youngsters within the troop. And so the bigger his testicles are, the greater the chances that he is going to be a father. Whereas in a gorilla situation, there is a harem, very strict harem, only the silverback mates, and so the need for big testicles is completely absent. And interestingly, and this is the interesting and slightly controversial, but human beings lie somewhere in the middle of that discussion. And what that predicts, of course, is that although we are nominally monogamous, so we occur in monogamous pairs largely, we actually have a propensity for philandering. Can you believe it? That's what our biology predicts. It's not to say that it's okay. Okay, I'm going to take my jacket off because it's very hot. It might just be the subject that I've addressed. It's causing me to be slightly hot under the collar. Thank you, Senzo, for pointing all that out to us. We're now going to go off towards Treehouse Dam, at least Chitwa Dam. No one's managed to find any cats at all, despite all of the tracks that we've had. It's very clever. Watch this, Senzo. My jacket's going to disappear. Alrighty. On the tracks is Steve. Let's go across to him and find out, well, whether he's managed to find anything at the end of them.
And we have the moon in the sky. Beautiful panoramic that, with a dead leadwood tree. Nice, beautiful blue sky we have at the moment. And we've got a small update for you. We've got more tracks here. We're in the drainage line. We found a beautiful area where the pride actually jumped down a little ravine area into the riverbed, and we've got one track here of a small lion. You can see the size is it's only the size of a little bit bigger than a leopard track. There it is there. There's the back pads. They're very, very tight together. There's a young female. You can see the toes over there. So this is one of probably the sub-adults within the pride, the Angama pride, we're thinking anyway. And we were on the radio. The tracks have been have been found a little bit further up, a little bit too far for us up on Central. The other vehicles are busy tracking on that one. So we're going to abandon the chase now purely because other vehicles are there. They got their trackers doing the work. It's a little bit far for us. But while we're here, we might as well talk about things. You come from squirrels to nuts that squirrels enjoy. Excuse the pun, I know you're talking a little bit about nuts. This is the marula pip, and clearly you can see where the nuts have been taken out inside. Now this marula pip here, this is actually what we call the kernel, or the kernel, and inside there would have been a seed. And if you take out that seed, the seed itself is very, very nutritious and full of oil. You can actually make a very nice oil out of it if you just steep it in water, hot water, and you allow the oil to separate, and you can skim the water off the top, and you can make it into a very nice lip balm for your lips. I know the ladies out there like their cosmetics. Very nice lip balm out of the oil. And if you find a marula seed like this, but if it's intact, with the kernels intact, and you give it to your friend, it is a very good gift. That's how you make friends in the bush. You give them a kernel with seeds inside that they can make lip balm for themselves. A very, very good way to make friends out here. And I found something else quite nice on the floor. This is a little scrub hair pellet. And you can see the color of it is quite sort of yellowy in color. And scrub hair pellets are quite nice for walking out here. We use ash bags, we use the wind, we need to test the wind all the time. And if I just break this for you, you can see how, I think it might be a bit too damp, but you can see that there's not much wind. You see how it falls? The wind is very gentle down here in the drainage line. So if you ever come across scrub hair dung, it's quite a nice useful tool for testing wind direction. But behind me, we've got a tree, and I do really enjoy my trees. This one here with the spikes. See, the leaves are very green. There are lots of spikes. This is not the sickle bush that we saw before. This is in fact what we call the common spike thorn. And why I'm talking about the common spike thorn, because this is actually a remnant of the forest biome. When you go into the forests, this is a tree that you will find there currently growing. In southern African forests, we actually still find this tree. It's more of a climber in the forest. It's not much of a tree itself, but it climbs up and gets altitude or gets height in the tree canopy by climbing on those other trees up there. But what you can do with these trees is when you find one of these straight branches, this one's not the best example here, but when you get some new growth like this one that's growing there, if you get that to grow probably another 30 centimeters or so, you can cut it off and you can dry it. You can peel the bark off, all the thorns, all the spines, all the leaves. You can actually use it in the process of making fire. You can use it as the fire drill. If you've ever seen that before, if I can demonstrate, the fire drill would actually be something that you do this on top of a base plate. So you'd find a base plate from a softer wood tree like the marula, or maybe a sycamore fig, and then you'll take the spike thorn branch and you'll do this with lots of friction. It takes quite a bit of practice to get it to work, but that is how you can make fire out here. But what's also quite interesting and easy to remember, whenever you come across plants out here that have got a spike, got some form of spike, we're not talking about thorns, we're talking about these spikes, modified stems. Most of these plants can be used, because they can penetrate you, most of them can be used to treat any sort of wound or infection. By taking strips of the bark, you can make it into a decoction. The decoction is quite simple. You boil it in water, and then you take that liquid and that fluid and you apply it to the wound. Okay, so any type of penetrating wound, apparently snake bites and scorpion stings as well. Once again, let's try avoid being eaten or bitten by those guys. And while we were in the drainage line with the lion tracks, I couldn't help but pick up a small little plant here. And for those of you back home who like cooking, this is in fact a plant called wild basil, and it is a very nice, sweet smelling plant. It doesn't smell like the basil that we have at home or the basil that we grow commercially for our gardens, but you can use it for cooking. It is quite strong, so use it lightly. But you can see that the flower head here looks very much like a typical basil plant or ossamum that most people out there will know and have grown. But what's interesting about this is you can actually use these leaves as a insect repellent. So a few years ago when I was working as a trails guide, I took these leaves and I steeped them in a carrier oil. It's sort of like a massage oil, carrier oil, and you steep these leaves in there for a period of time, and then you can apply that to your skin as a very organic and natural pesticide. I know lots of people use sprays and DEET and all those sort of things, but you know, these things have got chemicals in. I don't like them very much. So this, you can take it, you can even apply it directly to your skin. It's got quite a strong odor and it keeps the biting insects away. But obviously if you put it in oil, it's a bit easier to apply, and this only really grows in the wet season. So if you need a supply during the dry season, you might have to stock up on this. The taste, it's not too bad. There's nothing overpowering in there. There's a little bit of a herby taste, a little bit like basil, not as strong as the basil we get back home, which is quite strong on the palate. This is actually quite nice and quite edible. I might take this home and keep it. So the lion track, as I said here, they're a little bit too far. It's definitely one of the youngsters in the pride. Rex is up there doing a little bit more work for us. Let's see if we can catch up with him, see if he's got a little update. So you can hear the birds. I hear chin spot batis, the bird that goes 3 blind mice, quite clearly with a little whistle. One of our small little fly catching birds, little batis, very, very small. Very nice to see. The male has got the black on the chest, the female's got a little brown with a brown spot here, hence the name chin spot. Where is Rex? Have we lost him? Ah, we've got him. Little whistles in the bush, folks, is the way to communicate. We might go around this way. I walk in the rain, asked if I had a hoopoo feather. I had a feather. I have lost it. Walk in the rain. I have lost it. It actually was a very camouflaged little nightjar feather. Little nightjar feather that really was brown, camouflaged, little stripes, almost impossible to see on the ground, but luckily enough we spotted it. And you hear the fly catchers calling over here. See if we can get him up in the tree there. Nice big, looks like a jackalberry. What is that? You can just hear that call, that not actually a flycatcher, but the call is an alarm call, some form of alarm call. We had a few raptor birds, raptor species flying around before, and it was hard for us to see, but we saw a small raptor look like an eagle, or a small falcon that came across and took what looked like a dove or a pigeon, most likely a dove, out of the sky and then disappeared off with it. So we're still trying to see if we can locate on that. But there we have a crested barbet on top there. I am on the top left of that dead tree. Very beautiful, attractive yellow, black and red bird. Afrikaans called the Kaifkop Houtkapper, which basically means spiky head wood chopper, which Afrikaans names are very, very descriptive. And while we are down here in the drainage line, there are some wonderful little plants that we can use. I spoke briefly the other day about a plant called the poor man's toilet paper. Well, folks, this here is the rich man's toilet paper. This is one of the plants we call elephant ear. It's soft, it's silky, it's probably 3-ply. This is about as good as it gets. They do get a bit bigger when you get a little bit more rain. These can actually be almost a meter or probably about a foot or two high, taller than my head, and the leaves can be about the size of my hand. So you can get a couple of those, you can have a little bit of fun, you can actually a little bit more comfortable out here. Just make sure that when you grab this you have a look, because one of the plants we have out here, which is called a hibiscus, which actually will burn and sting with little tiny furs or little hairs on there. You do not want to be rubbing your private parts with something like that. But we're going to send you back to James, who I think is at Chitwa Dam. Hopefully he's managed to locate something there, maybe even just some birds, something interesting for the morning. Lovely, nice and soft. Take your makeup off if you wanted to, if you wore any.
Okay, here we are at Chitwa Dam, everybody. I was hoping to find the open-billed stork. I haven't seen it yet. We'll just have a squiz around. There are some white-faced whistling ducks, some Egyptian geese, obviously, the thick knees. There's the open bill. Right. Oh, well done, Sensor. You've got him. Have you? No, you haven't. Go further to the left, and you see that big rock in the water? Just to the right, left of that. Big rock sticking into the water. No, enormous rock. Huge, that's a hippopotamus. Huge rock. There, that huge, there's huge rock, that one. Now go to the right of that. There's the open bill. No, left. No, they're not those. Left a bit, that big black thing in the middle. That's him. Now, for those of you who missed it, Tristan found this bird a few days ago, and it was eating mussels. Yes, that's what I said, freshwater mussels, which I didn't think we got here, and yet we do, obviously, in great profusion. Well, obviously not in great profusion, probably have a few more open bills, but that's what his bill is specifically designed for. It's like a nutcracker to open up mussels, and the mussels that he was opening up and eating were about the same size, or they produced about the same amount of meat as a chicken breast. I mean, they were enormous. And otherwise, it is all the usual characters here at Chitwa Dam. Hippopotami, where they used to live. So they've probably joined the rest of the pod now. The little one will be a lot more robust than when we were last here, I suspect. That was about 3 weeks ago since I was last here. 3 weeks since our last TV show. Well, that's Chitwa Dam. There are the white-faced whistling ducks in a great flock. Jamie, you say that stork looks like a black flamingo. Jamie, look, I can see the vague resemblance in that it has a long neck, but otherwise the resemblance is fairly limited, and I'll tell you why. A flamingo has a unique bill structure where it basically puts its head upside down into the water, and then with a sort of specialized filter in the beak, it moves its head from side to side and filters out algae. And only a flamingo has a beak structure like that enables it to feed in that manner. I'd love to show you a picture of one, but I don't think I actually have a picture of the bill structure. Alrighty, that was Chitwa Dam. I was rather hoping for a little bit more action here, but you know, such is the morning. We've done a bit better than one grasshopper and some dead mantis. Let's keep going down here. Lovely sounds of the whistling ducks. Whistling. And I think what we'll do is head round onto the clearings. And I'm sure you can hear all that wild whistling going on. Terrified whistling ducks. It would also be very nice, of course, to find young Thamba in this area. This has been a long time since I saw that very serious leopard. Now, Senzo, I have just spotted something. And it illustrates my point about camouflage versus hiding. Can you see it there? It's a bushbuck. You should just be able to see it over the top of my hand. Yeah, that's it. That's it there. Now, you will have many sightings like this where people will say to you, look how well camouflaged he is. To them I say, you are talking nonsense. That animal is not camouflaged, it is hiding. And you really start to see camouflage when there is no vegetation, when the bush is thinning out because of the dry season. Or the obvious camouflage, I guess you could say. Isn't that amazing? Not so amazing, he's just hiding behind a bush. Okay, let's carry on. Tiny little bushbuck, a little baby, being sent just, or having probably been left there by mum. And unlike the impala, they do not move with the herd immediately. They will take a bit of time to hide for a while before they move with the little group. Some hypo tracks. The sound of the ring-necked dove. But otherwise, yes, things continue to be a little on the quiet side. We'll go up onto this clearing and get the microscope going. It's a very interesting question from Kat in Thamba. Kat, you say that you've got iguanas falling out of trees in Florida at the moment because of the cold. I believe it's unseasonably cold there. And you say, how does the cold weather affect cold-blooded animals here? Well, it affects them not too badly because it very seldom gets very cold here. Remember, the coldest temperature we get is around about 4 degrees Celsius, which, if I'm not mistaken, is around about 40 degrees, just over, yeah, about 40 degrees Fahrenheit or so. And so that's, you know, it's pretty, it's really not very cold. It's not freezing. And so it does get very dry though, and so what tends to happen during our dry, cold season is that the animals, or the reptiles, go into a kind of a hibernation, but it's much more estivation, which is a dormancy born of a lack of water rather than a lack of temperature. So often animals will sort of start to move on warm winter's days because it can very regularly go up to 75 degrees Fahrenheit or so in the middle of the day. So it doesn't affect them too badly. They just kind of go a little bit dormant, and then they come out and warm themselves in the sun when they can. On the ground there, the hardy-dar ibis. Wonderful. Quite nice to see. There's some impala up ahead, all of them seeming to be very, very calm indeed, none of them in a state of panic. I'm just plugging in the microscope if you're wondering what the thrashing about is. We have the microscope today because Senzor decided it would be a good idea, didn't you, Senzor? We haven't found anything to look at just yet, but I'm sure we shall shortly. Jared, apparently in for the final control room, is wondering if I'm going to put a hardy-dar underneath the microscope. Jared, that's a silly idea. I don't think I will do that because the hardy-dar is easy to see without the microscope. It's just good. Beautiful impalas there. Can they see Thamba the leopard or Sana the leopard? They don't seem to be able to. We've just got to give the microscope signal a few seconds to boot itself up. We can drive along while we do that. Get a better look at those impalas in the clearing. Many of you very hopeful that I can find Thamba. Let me assure you, not as hopeful as I am. All right, what we're going to do here is stop a second. I'm going to get out of the car. Senzo, you will tell me if Louise suddenly shouts in a panicked tone that we need to cross over to Steve. And then we're going to pick the grass that Steve was looking at earlier. There it is. Are you excited, Senzo? I will be very impressed one day when somebody invents a car that you can leave the door open and it won't clatter back and do its very best to give you an injury. All right, now let's see. Let me take that off. All right, Louise, we have the sawtooth lovegrass. Would you like to cut across to microscope? Tell me when she's done it. Has she done it? You hear? Yes. There is the sawtooth lovegrass, everybody. Isn't that amazing? Look at its colors. Now, are these impala alarm calling or are they just fighting? No, they're alarm calling. Let us dispense briefly with the sawtooth lovegrass and carry on and see what they're shouting at. They've seen something, these impala. They're shouting very loudly now. No, they've stopped. No, they haven't. Okay, let's go. They're off over here. They did have a bit of a sort of fight. Thank you for that, Senzo. Where are they looking? They're looking up here.
There's a leopard.
You got a leopard?
Yeah.
Hooray. Well done, Senzo. Sawtooth, lovegrass and a leopard. There it is. Unfortunately, it's going quite quickly towards the south. I think this is little Thamba. Here he comes. We'll get him crossing the road here. We should get him crossing the road here. There he is. Young male? No. Looks like a female. I am going to have to call this in, everybody. Except I don't know what road this is. No, it is. That's Thamba. There's little Thamba. Isn't that nice? Great stuff. All right, let's go carry on. Does any station copy me? Animal is mobile towards that termite mound with the Land Rover on it. There's a termite mound on the boundary between the nets and Chitwa. I'm sorry, I don't know the road name. He's mobile on that road down towards the nets boundary, south. Look at that. Isn't that great? I'll stay with him for as long as he's on Chitwa. How magnificent. There we are. I'm just going to quickly load the map, my map app, just in case we disappear off-piste. We don't want to do that. Toby, you say you were so worried about him, we haven't seen him for a while. I was a little bit as well, I must say. The very vulnerable stages of life, these chaps. Now, Tristan was saying some very, very interesting things yesterday during his sighting of Mvula. And he, of course, knows these leopards better than any of us do. And he reckons that this chap looks much more like Mvula than he does Tingana, and Tingana's presumed to be his father. We'll just try and get him coming front on. He likes to sit on a termite mound, so let's have a gamble and park next to this termite mound here and see if he doesn't climb onto it. Come on, boy. Don't let me down. Here he comes. There he is, with his enormous ears. Look at his ears. And it's those ears that Tristan thinks look so much more like Mvula's than they do like Tingana's. Mvula, for those of you who don't know, old male leopard. He's about 13 or into his 13th year. Seen yesterday, looking a bit ropey. But if he's managed to father this fellow, who is now... How old is he now? Wasn't he a July baby? Gosh, I can never remember their ages. He's almost 2. Come on, pop your head up over the top. Pop your head up over the top. I can see some grass moving on the top. Something wrong on the screen. Have you got him?
No. Do you have a picture?
No. Of the picture here, yes, there, he's on the...
I don't have a picture.
Louise, have you still got a picture? Senzo has no picture on the camera. Have you got no picture?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, alright, let's hand you over to old Steve while we sort out our problem, because Senzo's going to struggle to film this animal without being able to see it.
Well done, James. I believe you've managed to find a young leopard. I've yet to be introduced to that beautiful animal, but well done. Unfortunately about the technical issues that side, but I'm sure they'll be up and running shortly. We were chatting with the guys on the radio, and they reckon that the lions have not crossed the northern boundary. They've asked for our expert assistance, so we've been walking quite quickly to see if we can get back into the area and assist them, and they're somewhere inside of the block. Not quite sure where exactly, but Rexon is involved with the tracking effort right now, and he's communicating with the other guys. But while we are on the topic, we're going to be walking a little bit slowly. I've picked up some dry elephant dung. Talking about making fire before, and dry elephant dung is a perfect starter. Once you get that base plate and you get the drill, and on top and you drill and you get this is nice kindling. It must be very, very dry, and that's how you get a fire started. But another thing, and something I spoke about last night, but I forgot my lighter at home, elephant dung. Elephants are collectors of medicinal plants, and Sangomas and Yangas like to bless people and bless each other before they do readings, before they do any incantation or any sort of future reading to what might befall someone in their health, their well-being, their fortune, their love life, whatever it might be. So when you look here, you can see that there's strips of bark, there's grass, but there's mainly sticks in here. So this is from the dry season. It's a very different type of dung to the one I looked at yesterday. It was full of grass. So if we lit this, obviously we've got to be careful in the savanna biome not to start a fire. But if you light this, you'll notice that it starts to get quite a bit of an acrid smoke from it. And VM is the lucky man today. I'm going to bless him and his family. You can see there's a nice smoke coming up there. It's maybe just a little bit wet from the morning dew. There we go. It's got a beautiful smell. Oof. The thing with this as well, you can bless each other, bless somebody. You do this over their body, up and down. That smoke is supposed to ward off evil spirits. It's supposed to bless them. And what locals also used to do to keep away flies, they'll burn this in their homesteads. The smoke is quite strong. It's full of interesting flavors, and it'll keep away the flies. The issue is that if you burn this too much, you're going to smell also quite smoky, and if your partner is not doing it as well, you're probably going to be pushed away, because the smell will make you smell very, very smoky and quite unpleasant. But beautiful, beautiful stuff. So people actually will smoke this, because if you smoke this, there's all sorts of medicinal plants that have been collected. We spoke about the sickle bush. There's all sorts of plants. We don't know what's in here exactly, but the elephant has been feeding over medicinal plants to aid them in all sorts of ailments, digestive issues, stomach issues, throats and cough. Actually quite a nice thing to do if you don't mind inhaling some of year. But it's very important for us to be responsible for our actions. We do not want to start a fire in the savannah. It's well and truly out there. This block, they are lions, folks. They are lions. I know that everything is very exciting over there with James. We're doing our best this side. See if we can find you some of the big and hairies as well. But as we said earlier, the cats were reported on the dam cam sometime last night. I didn't get an exact time, but that means we're many, many, many hours behind. Now that it's starting to warm up, yes, they'll probably be sitting down and they'll probably be relaxing. So this is our time to catch up if we have the chance, if we have the stamina. We'll keep plowing on ahead, plowing on forward. You can hear the woodland kingfisher calling in the background. Such a characteristic call of the summer months. We had tracks before that crossed from that side into the block, but there's nothing really here on the road for us to see. But while we continue, I believe James' camera is back up and operational, so we're going to send you back over there to him and his spotted cat.
There is the spotted cat indeed, sitting on his termite mound, as is his wont. Magnificent fellow that he is. Just surveying his domain. Now, the comparison between him and Mvula is very interesting, as is the comparison between him and Hosanna. Now, I always said that I thought Mvula wasn't a very big male leopard. I maintain that. I think he's a smallish male, and I think also that, if I'm not mistaken, I cannot remember these leopards' ages. Of course, Hosanna is about to turn 2. This chap is isn't he slightly older? Louise, do you remember? Or is he slightly younger? I can't believe I don't remember that. That's right, he's in fact slightly younger. But he's much smaller than Hosanna, and he's not nearly as thick-set. And I wonder if that doesn't say something about his parentage, if that sneaky fellow Mvula didn't manage to father him. I think I've I think I've told them I'm on the wrong road, which is a little bit... I did say I should turn north, didn't I? Alright, the great joy is that the Masai Mara is with us now. We're going to hand you over to Ralph Kirsten, who I'm sure is very excited to be joining us. He is, of course, now sitting with some scavengers. Right, well, we're back here. Of course, Ralph has no audio, which of course is a very unusual situation for Ralph to find himself in, because you can normally hear Ralph from quite a distance away. I'm sure they'll fix that problem shortly. It's probably got something to do with a mouse click that needs to be clicked or done, or I don't know, something like that. Or Ralph's just got to turn his microphone on. I know this isn't the best view of Thamba, but I'm pretty sure that he will from time to time turn his head towards us, which will be very nice. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, many of you, of course, have been watching these leopards for a great length of time. And Barbara, you're saying that you think that he has Mvula's eyes. Now, there's nothing more dangerous, of course, than doing what we're doing now, which is to say, well, this leopard's got similar characteristics. He looks like his dad, or he looks like Mvula, but it is quite fun. I mean, we'd never know until we did a genetic test, you know, if we did a proper paternity test. And that will eventually be possible. I think somebody's actually doing that, and we have, of course, his scat, and we've definitely got Mvula's scat. So that will be done. But it's lovely to just think about how these things happen. And of course, it's through the outlandish theories that we come up with as lay people that a lot of the great science is done. So there's nothing wrong with us enjoying a bit of wild theorizing about his parentage, or anything else about him, actually. What a fun little fellow he is. Now, the reason I say that he looks serious, he's not giving us a serious look at the moment, but if you look at him dead straight on, he has got a face that says, I'm not here for a haircut, I'm here for very sensible and serious reasons. Whereas Hosanna, to me, looks mischievous. And Hosanna, for those of you who don't know, like I say, just about 2 years old. So this guy born in July 2016. The reason I keep misidentifying or misinterpreting his age, of course, is that his mother's already had another cub, which is quite unusual for him to be independent at 18 months. And of course it was before that, because it was 16 months. That little cub is now 8 weeks old. That is quite unusual. But not unusual, quite interestingly, for his sister, or her sister, Tandi's sister. Shadow often mates very quickly after, or soon after, her cubs are born. Yeah, Michael, I agree with you. You reckon that he just looks like his mum, with the green eyes, that same kind of dark nose and long face. Yeah, I agree. He does look like his mother. He's got a slightly softer face than his mother. His mother, Tandi and Shadow, have got harsh faces. When they look at you, it's not a comfortable feeling. Whereas when he looks at you, I feel it's a bit more comfortable. Yeah, Anna Marie, I don't know. You say, why does it take so long for us to get results from the DNA scat samples? I suspect it's got quite a lot to do with the time it takes for the actual paper to be published, and then it will be reviewed and put into, sent to various obscure scientific journals that will be read by 2 or 3 people before it eventually makes its way into the popular, what should we say, the popular writings. And it's quite interesting. Somebody who's doing quite a lot to change that approach of scientists, and Panthera's been great. I mean, don't get me wrong, their research is fantastic, and they've really made a massive contribution to the conservation of big cats around the world. But someone like Lee Berger, who is the paleoanthropologist of Wits University here in Johannesburg, has thrown his discipline on its head by publishing data as soon as it becomes available, even before it's been interpreted. And he's put it out into the public domain and said, right, let's interpret. Let's anybody who has the experience have a go at this data, and let's do this together, as opposed to keeping it within the narrow scientific community.